Shalom everyone, it's Friday again, and this time is Parashat Emor. In our parasha, we have a lot of very interesting things. For example, a lot of discussions of the different sacrifices of the different festivals. We read a lot of this parasha over the year, but there's one specific episode at the very end of the parasha which I find truly, truly fascinating. This is the story of the man who cursed God. Sounds a bit like a children's book, but it's not. It's real. ויצא בן אישה ישראלית והוא בן איש מצרי בתוך בני ישראל וינצו במחנה בין הישראלית ואיש הישראלי. Our story starts with a kerfuffle, with a fight, with some sort of dispute that gets nasty between two separate individuals. One of them is a Jewish guy, and the other guy, fascinatingly, is half Jewish. His mother is Jewish, as we find out later, Vashem Imo Shlomit Badivri Lemate Dan. She is from the tribe of Dan, but his father is an Ish Mitzri. His father is Egyptian. Now, intermarriage is a very well-known concept in Jewish history. We find every single time the Jews are in exile or in any separate country anywhere around the world, there will be a certain level of intermarriage. Now, to what degree was this? Is this symbolic of or significant of a much bigger problem? It's very unclear. Some of the Midrashim actually use this to prove a negative. They say, this is the one exception to the rule. This is the one case where we find intermarriage in the Tanakh regarding the leaving Egypt, and this proves that this was the exception. Again, unclear. There are different opinions on both sides, but either way, this is the situation. The Mefarshim and the commentators say that what happened is that this man is trying to settle in with his tribe. He wants to settle in Dan, but he's not from Dan. As in, yes, his mother's from Dan, but the tribe goes through the father, and his father was Egyptian. So the argument goes that he's trying to say, I do belong, and the people of the tribe of Dan say, no, you don't. You don't belong. And this is where it gets ugly. Vayikov ben ha'isha Yisraelit et Hashem vayikalel. And the half-Jewish man, the one who's got a Jewish mother, uses God's name and curses. It's not clear if he's cursing with God's name or if he's cursing God. Vayaviru oto el Moshe. And they bring him to Moshe and they say, listen, this guy went off the rails. What do we do with a guy who curses? And in many ways, this is the ultimate chilul Hashem, the abuse of the name of God, right? Vayikov et Hashem, right? Vayikov b'nei Yisraelit et Hashem vayikalel. What do we do with this guy? And in the end, he's punished, he's executed, and there's a whole series of laws that are set forth. Like these are red lines, we don't do this, and so on and so forth, which is fascinating in its own right. But I want to actually take a step further, or rather a step backwards, and say, wait a second, putting aside the whole unfortunate ending where he needs to be punished for where it ended up, what about the actual question itself? What is this man's status? He's got a Jewish mother and a non-Jewish father. Now, here I think is a very beautiful example of where this question, the question of matrilineal or patrilineal descent, does Judaism go through the mother or through the father, really comes to a head. Because it seems to be that this guy is Jewish, especially according to rabbinic halakha. We see already from the Mishnah and the Gemara, it's very clear that if your mother is Jewish, you are Jewish. And this, to this day, is the halakha. If your mother is Jewish, then you are Jewish. But what about the tribe system? What about, for example, a Kohen? A Kohen is someone whose father is a Kohen. A Levi is someone whose father is a Levi. That is very much a patrilineal, tribal tradition. Lebet avotam. It goes according to the household of the father. So what do we do with this guy? Because on one hand, he's maybe halachically Jewish. On the other hand, he doesn't belong anywhere. And we can see how this can very easily get very frustrating and cause a big chilul Hashem. The reason why I chose to go into this is because this is a very major issue in modern Jewish politics, especially modern Israeli politics, because we have two separate identities with regard to the Jewish people. There is the halachic identity. Is your mother Jewish? In that case, you are Jewish. And then there is the national identity, Israeli. that according to Israeli law, the right of return, you do not have to be halachically Jewish to become an Israeli citizen. For example, if your father is Jewish but your mother is not Jewish, you are eligible for Israeli citizenship. In which case, we have people, and I serve in Miloim with a lot of these guys from all over, Americans, Russians, all sorts. We have Jews who have intermarried throughout the world, unfortunately, throughout history, who are not halachically Jewish, but very, very Israeli, very patriotic. They serve in the army. They're very, very much active members of Israeli society. But they're not halachically Jewish. And what do we do with these kind of people? Very often they're half Jewish, sometimes even a quarter Jewish, according to the Israeli law. Even if your grandfather was Jewish, even on your father's side, you're still eligible for Israeli citizenship. So it gets very complicated. And this is a very big discussion in Israeli society. In many ways, a mirror of a much deeper question in Israeli society of the nature of Jewish identity in the modern Israeli state. Is the identity a national identity, in which case these people are part of the nation, they serve in the army, they're very much citizens, or is this a religious identification, in which case a lot of people say, well, I'm not religious, and so why do I care? But Judaism is neither a religion, nor a nation, nor a family. It's all three. And that's where it gets very complicated. Yehudi or Yisraeli, these are one of the major questions that really, you could say, are at the heart of Israeli society today. To add to that, an interesting point, the term Yisraeli is very rare in the Tanakh. We have Yisrael a lot, but someone who is Yisraeli, who is Israeli, right, only appears 3 times in the Tanakh. It appears twice in our story, Ben Ha'isha HaYisraelit and Ha'ish HaYisraeli, as in this is the discussion of the people who are on the outskirts of Judaism, but they are Yisraeli. They are Israeli, but they're not Jewish. Or maybe they are, we'll have to see in a second. They're in that kind of the twilight zone. And we also find an interesting case, again, in Shmuel Bet, with David HaMelech's brother-in-law, who married one of his sisters, Yeter HaYishmaeli, in Divrei HaYamim, Aleph Bet, or Yitra HaYisraeli, in Shmuel Bet Perek Yud Zayin. So there's a very big question there. Also, likewise, the Radak has very interesting analysis. Maybe he was a convert who was originally from the Ishmaelites and he converted, or maybe he was a Jewish guy who went to live with the Ishmaelites. There's a whole big question going on there. But either way, again, it's likewise a case of someone who is on the outskirts, who's not clear as to his identity, and that's why he is called Yisraeli. Coming back to our topic at hand, the question still stands. Wait a second. This guy is Jewish. He's halachically Jewish. So here I want to open a little Pandora's box, because the question of is Judaism matrilineal or patrilineal, does it go through the mother or the father, is actually up for some historical debate. It's definitely clear that from the Second Temple period, from the time of the Mishnah, the Gemara, it's very clear in the Mishnah, very clear throughout the Gemara, that it goes through the mother. But what about in the time of the Tanakh? And here, I even remember asking different rabbis of mine and getting very different answers from them. And this is because this is up for debate. There is a strong opinion out there that maybe during the Tanakh, during the period of the Tanakh, it was patrilineal. It was much more tribal. And as such, it goes through the father, not through the mother. In that case, a woman would marry into the Jewish people. We find this many times. A lot of David HaMelech's wives, Shlomo HaMelech's wives, or maybe from non-Jewish families, and they married in. The question is, did they convert or not? There's a whole question of maybe anachronistically trying to put it in systems that didn't exist at the time. But either way, there's a big debate going on. I refer you for this debate to a very, very good treatise on this, The Beginnings of Jewishness, by Rabbi Shea J.D. Cohen from Harvard, who writes very interesting discussions about this, very academic, very detailed. But the reason why I bring this up is because one of the main flashpoints of this discussion is this guy in our story who has a Jewish mother and a non-Jewish father. Is he Jewish or is he not Jewish? Actually stems from a famous midrash on this pasuk, the Sifra, otherwise known as Torat Kohanim, probably one of the most important midrashim on Sefer Vayikra, says, "Betoch bnei Israel melamed shani tigayer." And much has been discussed about this. It seems to be, and the midrash implies that this guy converted into the Jewish people, i.e., he wasn't halachically Jewish, i.e., maybe it is at the time patrilineal, it goes through the father and not through the mother. The Ramban and the other medieval commentators really kind of try and solve this and say, no, it means Nitgayer means he chose his mother's side and not his father's side because halachically he was Jewish, or another perspective from the Baalei HaTosafot, which is that no, this is all before Matan Torah and after Matan Torah, and all of these questions and how that figures out. Rav Hirsch has a very interesting analysis of this. But to wrap it all up together, this discussion, at many ways, at the very heart of this story, is someone trying to fit into the Jewish people and trying to figure out the boundaries of the Jewish people. A question which we are discussing to this very day. I would even say more now that we have a national identity, a state, it is resurfaced. Who is Jewish? What are the boundaries of Jewishness? And this question, as we see from our parasha, can very easily become very heated, can very easily also fall into the realm of Chilul Hashem, of desecration of God's name. And I think the lesson that we learn from this is that really at the end of the day, this man wanted to come in. He wanted to be part of the Jewish people. How do we make sure that those people who are on the outskirts, on the boundaries of this question, who maybe have one Jewish parent, maybe not halachically a Jewish parent, maybe it's not clear what their conversion status is, all sorts of issues where it's very easy for us as the Ish HaYisraeli in the story, the counter, to say, get out, you're not part of us, we don't have any need for you. I think the parasha might be saying to us, yes, it could be that the guy went too far in cursing God's name. But who brought him to that position? Who pushed him so far that he felt that he was so ostracized that even God was rejecting him and he needed to fight back against that? And I think there's a little bit of a message for us to try and start figuring out. This is going to be very relevant when the big aliyah comes from America, with all of the very, very mixed families that will come along with that. Who and what and why and where are the boundaries of Judaism today? How can we do this in a halachically legal and proper way? And I think this is a message for us to try and start figuring out how can we do this in a way that will minimize the challenges of Chilul Hashem. Shabbat Shalom.